to another episode of Get in Step with Nicole. I am your host, Nicole Horston, and I have a great friend, great guest who we are wearing the same colored shoes. Wasn't planned, wasn't planned. We're going to help the audience live out loud
Yes.
with none other than superstar Deanna Clark. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewing audience and just let them know a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Yes. I am a survivor of domestic and gun violence. I have a nonprofit organization by the name of Live Out Loud Enterprises, which helps raise awareness of domestic and gun violence in the community, in the state. We hold annual events in October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, for our survivors, just bringing that awareness to the community about the importance of domestic violence.
It's the name of your business
Yes.
that we're using for today's theme, but it's also because, ladies and gentlemen, guess what? Yep, say it. I hear you through the tube. Yes, you know I love an acronym. And so this particular acronym, I want you to pay close attention because we are, if you're living in a violent situation, we're going to help you as best we can. And of course, if this proves to be a trigger for you, please step away from the television.
Yes.
But we are going to protect this subject as best we can because we still want you to tune in because Deanna's on the journeying part and soaring part
Yes.
and living out loud part of her testimony. So just go ahead and if you would, because I know I've watched you on television as well. Today's not your first time sharing this. You have a great platform that you use to not only spread God's word, but you use it to inform and bring awareness to domestic issues. And so it actually stems from your own.
I was shot twice at point blank range when I decided to leave my estranged boyfriend, and didn't know anything violent like that would or could ever happen to me. Here I am, a college graduate, I'm working, I have my own place, and then something like that, so detrimental, happened to me, and it threw me off. It blew my mind, and so just that experience within itself, a lot of times people think that they are in these healthy relationships and they do not pay attention to the red or the pink flags, or sometimes those flags are there, but they continue to put their blinders on and move forward in the relationship, which was something that I did. He showed the signs of being obsessive, controlling, wanted to isolate me and things like that from my family. All those signs were shown to me, but I continued to go on in the relationship, Nicole. And I believe the reason why I did that was because I'd never seen a man model. Not to take anything away from my father, because he's a very good man.
Yes.
We have a very good relationship to this day. But I never seen a man model or how I should be treated when I'm in the presence of a man. So therefore, when I met this guy, because I didn't have anything to measure off of, I went off of what I thought I knew, and it landed me in the situation of being shot.
I just was amazed when I initially heard your story and all that you had endured, and you have made precedents because laws were changed because of your willingness to not be silent.
Yes.
And to live your truth out loud. And our laws, especially in the state of Ohio, because of your efforts,
Yes.
have been changed, and you have great system of people who are in the justice system who have locked arms with you to just see that this doesn't happen again if we can help it. And I know, like, a lot of times people shy away from what goes on in our house should stay in our house kind of things, but I'm of the belief that what goes on in your house, if it's not healed, can get you killed. And I do believe that wholeheartedly. I know for a fact, and that's, by attending your events and stuff, that and getting them more education about domestic awareness and violence, that it's more than just, like you gave some examples with beating you or, I guess down beating you, making you feel less than, but I mean verbal abuse. I mean, there's so many others that you can enlighten us on, but I had no clue that each type of abuse had its name and have its own characteristics. And that's why we're bringing awareness today. So because our kids, because we really have August and September, we are truly helping our babies, our teens, and having a lot of information to help parents. And that's why I asked you to come on, not only to share your story, because it's a great one, but it's also to educate us on the signs that we need to look for in our children, because there's dating abuse as well.
Yeah.
And you speak on so many of those others. So give us some of the examples of abuse that you have the expertise to share.
Yeah, so we definitely have the physical abuse, which physical is evident. So we see it with the black eyes, we see it with the bloody nose, the broken bones. And then we have the mental abuse where they're just playing on your mind. Like, you put the keys in the drawer. No, I didn't put the keys in the drawer. Yes, you did. Just making you think that you're going crazy. Then the emotional abuse where they're just basically tearing you down, or they're in a sense where, I love you, I love you, I love you, but you're showing something else. You're telling me that you love me, but you're showing me a different type of behavior.
Yes.
Then there's one that we don't think of, financial abuse, in which I was a part of that financial abuse, where you as the survivor, I like to say survivor, not victim, because survivors are always using their skills and tactics to survive in that moment. So I don't like to say victim, because it makes a person look as if they are weak, when survivors are not weak. They are compiling everything, every skill they know to survive in that situation at that time. And so that the financial abuse is one, as I stated, where the perpetrator or the abuser, he'll quit his job. And I say he, but it can happen to men as well.
It definitely can, yes. And we'll put that out there so that we know it's both sides of the spectrum. But again, like I asked her from her experience.
Yes.
So, but yes, it definitely can be both sides.
It does, but they'll leave their job, or they'll quit their job, so that for me, it was where I was paying all the bills and he wasn't working. But then, like, you can reverse that too, where you as the survivor's not working and they're working, where they can control you, keep you isolated. And I spoke a couple of weeks ago to a group of individuals, and I talked about how in a state of that financial abuse, because they wonder, why do survivors stay so long in these relationships? Well, there's fear, there's threats, there's this thing about, I don't want my children raised up in a single parent home. But when you think about it, that perpetrator has isolated this survivor from everything that they possibly know. And so this person becomes that person's lifeline and all they know. So therefore, this is who I have to be with, because this is the only way I'm going to survive, is through this person that has now taken everything away from me, and all I have is them.
I'm telling you, this is really interesting to me, because the spectrum has broadened even from my own understanding of what those terms meant. Because you're right, one never thinks of the financial abuse, but it is when you're using it against to control someone.
Yes.
And even your words, just being nasty for no reason, if you will. That someone feeling less than. And even if you're using it as a joke, but those were words that actually still cut to the core, because
gaslighting.
Oh, that's a good word. Yes, gaslighting. And so you have overcome, like I said, we wanted to bring up that to just kind of set the foundation, because you've done a lot of work, because you have rebuilt your self-esteem, your confidence in your abilities and in yourself, and you don't shy away from actually talking about the hurtful part of the journey. And like I said, if we be silent about those things, we cannot help the next one. Sure. And so I'm so very grateful for you for doing that. So when you went back to just kind of thinking, playing all the steps in your head, that day that you said, I'm leaving, that's it, there's no other chances or no other ways for him to hurt me, how did that look?
So when I made the decision to leave, of course it was scary. There was the embarrassment, the shame, because I didn't say anything to my mom or my dad, because my parents didn't raise me to be in a situation such as that. And so when I left, I got my own, and like I did everything so quick, like got my own place and moved out extremely quick. And then, that day he came back and he he came to my apartment. He came to my apartment for some dishes he let me borrow, and so we wanted to argue, and in that argument, he pulled out the gun. He pulled out the gun. I ran for the door, and I didn't remember it all. The detective had to explain to me that I literally ran out the door. I thought I got to the door, but I ran out the door, and he bear hugged me, dragged me back into the apartment, and we were going back and forth, me screaming, crying, and yelling, just being afraid, and eventually he had blocked me in, so I couldn't get out my door. But when he let up, I went to go reach for the door, and that's when he shot me twice at point blank range. And so later on, and while I'm in the hospital, I found out that he turned the gun on himself and he shot himself in the head. Now, he did survive, and I'm so thankful because I told the detective when I talked to him like 7 days, maybe 14 days after I got out of the hospital, I said, he was like, typically in these situations, you got shot really close. I'm usually zipping people up in body bags and I'm carrying them out. I said, well, do you believe in God? He said, yes. I said, well, that's who stepped in and interceded for me on that night. And he said, yes, he did. He did. And I know that I'm on borrowed time. So I know I have a purpose. I know that my life was designed and created to be able to go back, be the sojourner truth, go back to somebody and extend my hand and bring them out of the situation that they're in. And so that's all, I'm just grateful to be used like that, just to go back and help somebody else. And when you talk about, working with the different politicians and things like that, well, I didn't say much about my story. I told my story on small platforms, but didn't say much. Well, I ran into a House representative who's a representative in Akron and told her my story. And she, to me, I always explain, put a cape on me. And to me, that made me feel like I was Superwoman and I could be more verbal about what I have went through with domestic violence. And so now what I want to do is pay that forward and put a cape on somebody else's back so that they can have the strength that they need to be able to talk about what they're going through or even to remove themselves from that situation.
And it's so just true that that cape can cover you, like to keep you protected from what you're about to undertake, because it is a scary. And a lot of times most men or women don't survive the escape unless they do have a plan, because of course, even though the abuser is controlling, they still, in a weird way, still care, still love you. They just really haven't, I'm not making any excuses, but I'm telling the truth about the matter, the same way the survivor returns as a revolving door, because once you escape, and I think I was taught it was like 6 times,
it's
6 or 7 times.
times.
7 times,
Yeah.
okay. So 7 times, it takes 7 tries. And when you just said 7, that reminds me of a man falls 7 times and gets back up.
Yes.
Just in that moment, because it now brings light to me, like, yes, okay, so it takes 7 times, 7 tries to quickly and completely remove yourself.
But see, what people don't understand, Nicole,
Yes,
is
ma'am.
that when it comes to a survivor and being intertwined in that trauma that they're experiencing, in that control wheel when it comes to domestic violence, what happens is the survivor has this tendency mentally to be able to separate the abuse from the person. So I love this person, and and I see this person in this unharmful way, so they can separate that, and that's what keeps them there. Like I have the tendency to separate it, where for somebody on the outside see the abuse over who the person is, but the survivor doesn't. They are able to separate it, and all they want is just for the abuse to stop. And if the abuse stops, then everything would be better. And a lot of people don't look at that when they think about, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just pack your bags? Which that's the most dangerous time of a survivor's life. Like, that's likely when they're to get killed, when they do remove themselves from the abuser.
Well, I just appreciate that. But, you've shown that it can be done.
Yes.
And it is possible, and you are living L.I.V. You live your life out loud, because now your resounding voice is, I'm thinking of that but God moment.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like you said, many people who have gotten shot and where you got shot don't survive.
No.
And then him, of course, turning the gun on himself, self-harm. He also survived. So God blocked it on both ends, because that just proves to me that God loved you both. And, he don't like the sin, but he loves his children. And I just, when you said that even today, and as many times, like I said, I've heard you tell your story, you just sound even more stronger in your resolve. And I'm so proud of you for that. But it hurts me because like both sides lose, and of course we try to help our friends,
Yeah.
but I want to help our kids too because as an adult we have rational thinking, even at times when it's hindered. But our children are just growing and they're learning to be in a relationship.
Yes.
Learning to love, if you will, from, we call it puppy love, standpoint. But the examples you gave happens with our kids. And just like as a fresh college student, was afraid to share it with your parents because you know how you were brought up, how you were reared, that wouldn't be accepted. But yet you accepted it. And so our children need to understand that they don't have to accept it, even though they feel, for the sake of the relationship, I want to. Can you help our teens and our tweens with this as well?
Absolutely. So one of the things our organization does is every February we host a teen dating violence seminar, and we probably gather like about 20 girls. We want it to be small and intimate so that we can really penetrate the importance of domestic violence.
I like
and
that,
so
yes.
We do that every February. Besides COVID, that kind of slowed things down.
Right.
But the thing is, yes, one thing we work on is prevention, and prevention is when we're hitting our teenagers, letting them know that this type of behavior is not acceptable. Now, one thing I can say is that the culture right now is saying it's okay for a boy, even though it can happen to a girl, but it's okay for a boy to touch your private parts. And
Yes.
it's okay for him to pull your hair or put his hands on your face. Where I was growing up, we couldn't let a
No,
boy
ma'am,
put
no,
his
sir.
hands on our face.
Yes.
And so when I'm speaking to my young girls, I'm always sending that message of, do not be okay or do not normalize a boy putting his hands on you in an aggressive way or a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, because all you're doing is you're allowing yourself to grow up as a woman and make it normalize that it's okay for a man to put his hands on me inappropriately. Yes. So when I'm talking to my girls, number one, it is self-confidence, because think of it like this, and I always tell my parents when I'm talking to the girls, the home is an incubator, and in that incubator, you have to pour in and put in as much positive things that you can in that incubator. So when that baby comes out of that incubator and goes out into this community, then that baby knows how to gauge how they should feel, how they should be talked to and treated, and things of that nature. So it's always, when it comes to my girls, we start with self-esteem first. Even if you have to put the sticky notes up in the mirror, because that's what I had to do to overcome. Sticky notes everywhere saying, this is who I am, so you can see that reflection and become what you see. So it's always self-esteem first. And then we talk about how you present yourself and how you should be. But yes, of course, what pink flags look like. And I like to say pink flags is attracted to little girls. So we talk about, a boy, again, putting his hands on you inappropriately, how he's talking to you. Also, look at how he may treat his little sister, or look at how he may talk to his mom. Also look at his behavior in school. Now, is he the boy that's popular with all the girls? So you want to look at things like that and just know that you're more worthy of being around or accepting that type of behavior from a young man. But I get in the grind with the little girls.
I love that, because they need to have real raw conversations, but yet in a way that, okay, they first of all know that you're serious about this, and this is a serious issue. And do you also have, like, I know your whole focus is girls, but is there like times when you would, because you speak all over, so are there times where you also introduce and educate the young men?
Absolutely. I had the opportunity to do that when I'm in schools. And then just recently I was on a panel and I spoke to boys. But again, I can speak to it in the same way. Like, you don't let a girl put her hands on you in a certain way, but then flipping it, because most of the time the abuser is a male, saying, hey, if a girl does not want to do what you want them to do, then that's their prerogative. They can do whatever they want to do.
And it's okay.
And it's okay. You don't have to put your hands on them. And how I tie it in is because a lot of boys are athletes, and they want to become this popular athletic star. And I always say, well, look at LeBron James. Do you hear LeBron hitting on his woman? Do you hear? No, LeBron is an asset to his team, not a liability. And if you want to be an asset on your team, then once you get that strike of domestic violence on your record, it's gone. And I give examples of different athletes that have gotten that
In the
domestic
NFL,
violence charge.
NBA,
Yes,
yeah,
and they are
NHL,
gone. They're
yes,
gone. So
absolutely.
you don't want that, you know. And so that's how that's my tone when it comes to boys.
And I can feel the excitement
I
resonate
love
off
it.
of
I
her
love it. I
because
love
you
it.
can tell that you love it. And it's hard a lot of times when you come from out of a struggle, especially the one that you have overcome and you are doing the work on yourself, you're doing the work in the community, just to have that, thank you, Father, moment.
Yeah.
And I know you've had them
a
because
lot of
we're good, we're close friends, and I know you've had them. How does that, your faith, like how does that catapult you? Even times where, our brain is it's a sharp muscle and it can hurt or harm us because it brings back those mind movies or those triggers of things that maybe that happen in the relationship. How do you overcome those, Deanna? Like really help us because triggers are real. I had them even with the loss of my sister, with my heart attack, like those triggers come back to what if this would have happened or what if that would have happened. So do you have those mind movies? Let's clarify that first. And then if so, how are you using your faith, your trust in God? Because you're definitely a woman of strong faith. That's how I met you at your Zumba, your Zumba class, with you just sharing, God, getting in fitness for God. But just seriously, how does it help you overcome and just really think, like reset that mind quickly?
So triggers. I've dealt with the mind movies for a very long time. From the time I've gotten shot to even today. But the difference between from when I got shot and today is literally the strength of the Lord. When I say, Nicole, I had a mental breakdown. I never knew what people were talking about, never knew the feeling. But I did have a mental breakdown a couple of years ago, about 2.5 years ago, and it broke me. It broke me to the point where I was like, oh, God, you know what? You can go ahead and just get me up out of here right now because I cannot take any more.
I've been there.
I can't.
I
can't. And I'm just like, I see what people are talking about now. And it was like the Spirit kept saying, if you hold on a little while longer, it's going to be over. And I'm like, God, when? It was just kept saying, just hold on a little while longer. I didn't even know who I was. Like, I had to go to my mom in tears one day and say, I don't know what's happening, and I don't know who I am right now. And all my mother could do was just hold me. When I say tripped out, I tripped out so hard. So
can we just, I don't mean to interrupt because see, the Spirit, I got
goosebumps
I
on my,
it too.
Do you?
I feel it
the
too. Spirit is so strong. And I love these shows that God just moves and like it was a quiet shift and move in both of us because I know where you've been. I see where you are. And I'm telling you, it's such a great feeling to know that there is a God who loves us through it all. And when you said, you whispered, now your voice was very loud this whole time, but when you said what he said to you, when he spoke to you, just hold on. You whispered it because see, I know that he's saying it to you and he's talking to you. And that, that just, I had to bring knowledge because see, you're not in the studio with us or the audience with us, but the feeling that just went over both of us at the same time because I know how it feels when he said it to me and he's no respected person. So when he said it to you, just hold on.
Just hold on. Just those words there. And that was that moment where it's like you have nothing else to do or hold on. But I know I was crying when you were talking. The only thing you have is God. Like his words. His words. It's you have God, but then the only thing you have is his words.
Hallelujah.
And his words aren't even tangible. His words aren't tangible, but that's the only thing that you have. Like, that's where you become strong. Like, you can look back and be like, that was my turning point. Like, that's where that scripture that says, I will make you strong where you're weak. Like, that's where that was. And so all I could do was hold on. But I asked him, God, put some people in my around me that's going to
Yes.
keep me while I go through this. And he did put people in place where I connected with them and I told them was vulnerable about what's going on. Because see, what a lot of people don't know, well, a lot of people do know, I got
Well,
engaged.
our viewing audience doesn't know. They don't know. So if you want to share,
So, yes.
what are you going to share? Yeah, go ahead.
So I got engaged and I had to stop.
Yes.
I called the wedding off, like literally where everything was ready and set to go. It was like maybe a month before the wedding. I called the wedding off because I realized that one, I did not get completely healed from my relationship of being shot. But also,
Wow.
there was some tendencies, not full blown, but there was some tendencies of what I had experienced. And so I knew I could not go on because it wasn't going to be no fair to that other person, nor was it going to be fair to me or our relationship. And so I called the wedding off. And in doing that, that's when, like, it seemed like my world just started crumbling down and I had this mental breakdown. I got with a therapist, besides getting on my face and praying and things like that.
Yes,
And the
yes.
natural, I got with a therapist that dealt specifically with trauma. And I worked with this man day in and day out to get all of this out of me because I was like, I want to function in normalcy.
Normalcy, yeah,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
I don't want to function through this trauma bond, through this trauma that I
Yes.
had. And so working with this therapist, and now it's nothing but God. It's nothing but God. Now I'm in a place, Nicole, where I've never been this happy. I never felt this much joy. I never felt this much gladness. I'm fulfilled. I'm fulfilled, and it's not predicated off of a man, a job, or a car, house, anything like that. Like, I am fulfilled. I woke up one day saying, I'm rich. My bank account does not look like
Yes.
it, but I am rich. I felt that. And so I'm thanking God that I now can say I'm on. And the thing is, when I was going through my mental breakdown, I was like, God, I want to see the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Because I don't
I wanted
see
to
it.
stop. I wanted to move past
I
this and move,
didn't see it. I didn't see it. And now I'm on the other side of it. And it feels so
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
It feels so liberating. Like, who the son sets free is free indeed. And that scripture is for real. It's for real. I feel it. And I am that. I am that. And that's through Live Out Loud. That's what I want other people to know. Like, you can experience trauma, but there's life after trauma.
There's life
and it's
after.
so much more. It's so much more. It's so much more. So I'm not thinking about a man. I'm not thinking about anything. I just want to live in this space that I have with God right now in my singleness, and I'm loving it. To do to do ministry.
And oh my ooh yeah. Ooh. I don't even want this show to end, and so we're gonna have to get you back for a part 2 because I'm telling you, like when it get, how the spirit when it just get good to you and you don't want to let go of it, like I used to always say that, God, when I'm going through troubling situations, like God, I'm not gonna let go of believing and having faith until you bless my soul. And I mean, it's just like just seeing you live out loud and your business, just look at all these things that this beautiful woman who was once met with a traumatic experience, look at how she's blossoming. So how can the audience hear more of you, follow you, tap into your story even more after the show? How can they get in contact with you?
Yes, definitely. I can be reached on Facebook at Deanna Clark or Instagram at Deanna Live Out Loud, or my email or organization's email is L.I.V.E.O.U.T.L.O.U.D 614@gmail.com.
God is still a suddenly kind of guy who can change any situation around, but there's something that needs to be learned on both ends. And so you had to learn, to me, because I only can be the outsider looking in, the lesson was just learning how beautiful Deanna Clark is. And your person had to learn that there is a God that can still love you beyond your mistake.
Yes.
And so I just, I applaud you, and I truly want you to keep on going. Give us one takeaway that our children's parents that can help them.
Definitely just staying tapped in, tuned in to your child. The bedroom, and I'm just going to be honest, there's a lot of mishidden things in your child's bedroom that you may think is just normal, but it could definitely be something else. You want to look for definitely that isolation. You're going to look for that isolation. And then if your child is always wanting to be up under that person that they're saying that they're dating, because that is definitely a sign that that person is controlling them and wanting them to actually be around them so that they will know where they are all the time. So definitely look for that. That's the isolation. That's isolation.
Yeah.
Because once they remove them from their family, which that's where they're most connected to, then once I